Good afternoon. Welcome to the December 13, 2018 meeting of the City County Planning Board. Would you please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Today's meeting is being broadcast live on TV 13. It will be rebroadcast at 10 a.m. Friday morning and again at 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon. Our first order of business today is the consent agenda. These are items for which the petitioner is requesting withdrawal or continuance, or items for which staff has recommended approval and no one has signed up to speak in opposition. For our public hearings today, each side has a total of 12 minutes. There is no rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed and the board goes into work session, no one will be permitted to speak unless a planning board member asks a question. For general use district zoning, the board must consider the full range of uses allowed in the zoning district being requested. Therefore, the petitioner may not refer to a specific use for the property. For special use district zoning, however, the petitioner must identify the intended use and give specific details on how the site will be developed. Items under Section B of the agenda require final approval by either the City Council or County Commissioners. As such, votes taken today by this board goes to them for their consideration. If you're addressing the board today, before you begin your remarks, please give us your name, address, and zip code for the record. First item of business is approval of the minutes of the November 8 meeting. Any additions or corrections to those minutes? Not, I'll accept the motion.
Move approval.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Now call on Mr. Roberts for our consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. First item on the consent agenda is item B3. This is a rezoning case number 3391, and this has been automatically continued as per your bylaws to the January 10th Planning Board meeting. Next item is agenda item B4, 3393. This is a site plan amendment for GBS zone property located on the west side of Siles Creek Parkway, just north of Fairlawn Drive. And let me show you the site plan here. You may remember of looking at this last November. Again, it's zone GBS, and this site was originally approved as a stormwater facility, and then it was approved for a site plan amendment last year for a bank, and now the request is to convert that to motor vehicle repair and maintenance facility with 7 bays. That use is an approved use, but it's just the site design that we have to look at. So just zooming in a little bit closer, but first I want to show you when this bank was approved and converted from the stormwater facility last fall, they agreed to a stormwater condition that they would take over maintenance of this facility here where the darker green is located off-site, where the apartments are located, and bring that up to par with the Section 75 stormwater management requirements of the city ordinance. So that was one of the conditions of approval prior to certificate of occupancy. They have to acquire access to this facility and bring that stormwater code up to speed. Zooming in a little bit closer, this is the proposed site plan here. Access is still in the same location. Landscaping and signage common with the adjacent shopping center, same buffer yard around the perimeter. Actually less impervious coverage. This is about 55% impervious coverage, whereas the bank was about 64, I believe. We've worked with them on the design of this facility. We were a little bit concerned in regard to architecture of a 7-bay auto garage there, and so they've bumped up their elevations a little bit, and this is consistent in regard to brick type with that is what's shown on the Lidl shopping center next door. And they've also removed all the parking and access pretty much around the back of the facility. And so this is the elevation here on the back. It's not as attractive as the front, but they've added a row of evergreen trees, and there's not really any activity back there. So that kind of reduces some of the sound impacts on the adjacent residential development. Again, the site plan will carry forward the stormwater condition that was previously approved, And site plan meets ordinance requirements, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. Staff recommends approval.
Okay. No one signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing no one, declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval.
Good night. Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Groves. Yes, sir. Mr. Brown?
Has there been any progress on the stormwater upgrade?
Well, the way the condition is wording is that was not a requirement for the Lidl facility. It's just this facility, once they get prior to getting their certificate of occupancy, they have to go off-site and improve that stormwater pond. So until they apply for their CO, that won't happen.
So this makes it large enough to require.
Yes, this is the trigger as per last fall's approval, yes.
Any other comments? We have a motion for approval. Those in favor? And you opposed? You opposed, Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Okay. Passes 8-1. Thank you.
Next item is agenda item B5. This is rezoning case 3394 located at the southeast corner of Old Salisbury Road and Clemensville Road. This is a two and a half acre site. It's currently undeveloped, a couple of accessory buildings located on it, shown in yellow there. And the proposal is to rezone that from RS9 to LOS, limited office special use. The property again is zoned single family, as is all the property to the south. You've got a church directly to the south, a church office directly to the east, church across the street, a church catty corner there across Old Salisbury and Pope Road, and then a commercial establishment here zoned LBS. This image is of the site plan showing the subject property. They really just initially wanted to build a 3,000 square foot, one-story office building, which is consistent with the South Suburban Area Plan. It recommends office and low-intensity commercial for this site. So the request in regard to uses is consistent with the plan. But we did encourage them to bring in some more property for access coordination, and so they have done that. Eventually, there could be a total of 12,000 square feet of offices built on this site. 2 access points, one onto Clemensville, and one onto Old Salisbury. And also they pulled the buildings up, not right on the street, but they put the parking to the side or rear, which is also encouraged in the area plan. So again, it's consistent with the plan in that regard. But just to make sure it is an attractive addition to this intersection, they've agreed to some additional landscaping I've got shown in green, although it's not required, in between the building and the street. And here are the attractive building elevations. The upper left is the view from Clemensville Road, and lower right is from Old Salisbury Road. And the site plan does meet ordinance requirements, is consistent with area plan, and staff recommends approval.
Anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval. Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Hicks. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, next item is C1. This is a special use permit for the use of quarrying, mining, or extractive industry in the GI zoning district. This property is currently undeveloped. It's a northern extension, basically, of the Vulcan Quarry, now located off of Germantown Road and Patterson Avenue. But this is a special use permit that will have to go to City Council. From your perspective, it's basically treated as a planning board review item. It's not a public hearing. It's just making sure that the ordinance, that the site plan meets ordinance requirements. This gives a little bit broader perspective of the site. Again, it's zone GI. You've got some more GI zoning directly to the north. This is used for a stormwater pond for the northern quarters residential development, which is zoned MUS. Then you have some office development further to the east, and the quarry further to the south. Patterson Avenue over here would be the primary access to the site. This is a site plan showing the subject property there. It's basically to be used as a stockpile area. It does include about 11,000 square feet of new building addition. The access is located over here in the lower left. There's a condition, as you see here, there's 2 primary conditions I want to draw your attention to in the lower right. One is that no extraction, rock crushing, processing, or asphalt mixing plants will take place here. So those are a normal part of the mining, quarry, extractive industry, but they've agreed to none of that activity. This will just be for stockpiling, and also no access to Pine Brook Knolls Drive, located in the upper right here. and staff does recommend approval. The site plan meets ordinance requirements.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Leek. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, next item is D1. This is a major subdivision located at the intersection of Reynolds Boulevard and Indiana Avenue. It's primarily zoned general industrial as well, a little bit of office zoning right here at the intersection. Currently, there's about 350,000 square feet of former warehousing and industry-type uses that are on these properties. Most of that will be retained. I think they're going to remove about 20,000 square feet, at least initially, and subdivide this into 10 lots. So here's the site plan for the subdivision. This is basically a northern extension of Shore Fair Drive. That is a minor thoroughfare. So they're showing sidewalks, wide sidewalks with a multi-use path on one side and sidewalks on both sides, street trees, and then another access road here. This is a local street, but they're also showing sidewalks on both sides of that. It's kind of hard to see on this image, but it does show the footprint of some of the buildings that will at least initially be retained. These vary between 3 and about 9 acre lot sizes. And the site plan does stub the street over here to the railroad track opposite of Akron Drive for potential crossing there, maybe further down the road. But this is a part of the Whitaker Park development where the city is working on redeveloping this area for expansion to the employment base and tax base. So staff does recommend approval. It meets ordinance requirements, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Move approval.
Second. Motion, Mr. Lamb, seconded by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? Mr. Leek's here. He'll have it filled in about 18 months to 2 years, I think, so. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next item on your agenda is item E1. This is a planning board review for a single-family subdivision. In this case, also in accordance with your bylaws, this has been automatically withdrawn. They initially submitted a planned residential development, but they found out that they can do this through a conventional development to get the lot yield that they would like. So they have withdrawn this request. Next item on consent is E2. This is a planning board review for a daycare center accessory to a church in the IP zoning. This is Kerwin Baptist Church, located at the intersection of Old Hollow Road and Chess Lane. Most of it is zoned IP. There's some portions that are zoned RS9 there on the church campus. And this is, again, is to add the use of child daycare center as an accessory use. They're not proposing any expansion to the footprint of the building. Really, they're just showing an outdoor play area. They're required 100 square feet of play area for each child. They're proposing 75 children, so they've got about a 7,700 square foot outdoor play area with a 4-foot fence. That's ordinance requirements. Their loading spaces are shown out here where they currently are in front of the church. It is in the watershed, and they've got a condition to comply with the watershed requirements and update their permit. So site plan meets ordinance requirements, and staff recommends approval.
Move approval. Mr. Chairman, I need to be excused from this.
Okay. We have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Leek. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Mr. Grubbs being excused. Thank you.
All right, next item on consent is item E3. This is also a planning board review for a 21-lot subdivision. It's a southern expansion of Sage Meadows, which has its primary access up to the north here on Clemensville Road. This site is actually, it would be access from Wharton Avenue, which tees into Old Salisbury Road, and this is just north of Stafford Village Boulevard. It is zoned RS9, and this is the site plan. So in showing the subdivision, it is a planned residential development to maximize their lot yield. So they do have to comply with the passive open space, which is a 30-foot area around the perimeter, and active open space shown there at the very entrance into this development there, shown in green. And the site plan does meet ordinance requirements, and staff recommends approval.
Move approval. Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, we've actually got a hearing, I believe, on this case, so we will move on to the next item on your agenda. This will be a hearing for F-1583.
Got one. One. B1? Yeah. B1. Yep, B1.
Okay. This case was also continued from your November meeting to give the petitioners a little bit more time to work with neighbors and to polish up the site design a little bit, which they have done. The petitioners are Rayford Kirkman, Lynn Hayes, and Inez Motsinger. The site is 92.66 acres located on the northeast corner of Wahlberg Road and Shirley-Weevil Road. And the request is a special use rezoning from agricultural to limited industrial special use. And because it's within the Abbott's Creek watershed, they're asking for special intense development allocation, or CEDA. This is Legacy's growth management plan. It's located in the southeastern portion of the county in the light green future growth management area 4. It's in the future growth management area because currently gravity sewer is not provided to this site. It does have public water, but I will address how it does have access to sewer in just a moment. This is a zoning map showing the subject property. Again, it's located at the northeastern corner of Wahlberg Road and Shirley-Weevil Road, directly across from the Union Cross Business Park, and it's south of the US 311 I-74 Union Cross interchange, which is one of the reasons, obviously, why it's an attractive site for industrial use. It's pretty much undeveloped. There are a few single-family homes and accessory buildings located on it right now. Directly to the north, you have some general industrial zoning for a golf driving range, and then agricultural zoning and low-density residential property further to the north, to the east, and to the south across Shirley-Weevil. And again, the industrial park located across Wahlberg Road. This aerial image shows the subject property. The most developable portion of the property is in the southwestern portion there, where you can see it's currently been used for farmland. Further to the east, most of it is heavily wooded. There are a few streams that pose significant topographical challenges to this site. There's also some wetlands in that area. So really most of the development, as you'll see, is concentrated here in this southwestern corner. This is the Southeast Forsyth County Area Plan Update recommendation. You can see the industrial recommendation, which is purple across Wahlberg. And this subject property is recommended to remain agricultural or low-density residential. But you can see there's a blue line around it and some adjacent property that abuts up to the interchange. And it is a special land use condition area where it recommends for industrial use if sewer can be provided. What the proposal is this is not a really heavy water user, so they will pump their sewage through a force main up to Wahlberg Road here at the intersection, and then that will be provided with a gravity sewer that can serve this individual property. Future development in this area may require more substantial investment for sewer, gravity sewer in this area, but this site can be served through public sewer. These images are taken on site. This is on Wahlberg Road looking north, right across from Business Park Drive to the left. This is a signalized intersection now. The main entrance to the development would be to the right there, and they would rework that signal to allow for a fourth leg on that signal there. Looking south on Wahlberg, the site is to the left across Wahlberg. From the business park, there would be no other access points onto Wahlberg. They've got about 1,700 feet of frontage on Wahlberg, but that would be the only entrance I showed you earlier. This is looking back into the business park. Down on Shirley-Weevil, this is looking west. The site is to the right, the farmland I mentioned earlier, and in the background is the intersection there of Wahlberg, Shirley-Weevil, and Enterprise Park Boulevard. So this road, Shirley-Weevil, if this was approved, would have to be realigned slightly at the intersection there to line up with Business Park, Enterprise Park Boulevard, and also widen some. This is a site plan showing the subject property, and buildings shown there in purple. It is a significant size building, 660,000 square feet. It's about 1,500 feet long, and you see the parking shown in gray. The part of the site that I mentioned earlier that's topographically challenged and has the streams there. 2 stormwater ponds are located here. Just first start off Up here in this red area, this is where the main entrance is proposed. Staff really wants to commend the developer for adding this. It's almost a 6-acre tract. This was not originally included. We really wanted to see access for this whole entire 250 acres line up with the existing business park access, which I mentioned is signalized, and so that's what they've done. They brought in that area there that they did not initially need for the entrance here, so we appreciate that. This area here is primarily for tractor storage. The main use of this would be for warehousing and distribution. So this would be for tractor trailer storage. And you've got access that comes around both sides of the building, employee parking to the side or rear. Shirley Weevil Road also has a loading area and for tractor trailer, and then 2 entrances here for employee parking. There's a pedestrian connection here, and there's several road improvements that are being proposed.
Let's pause for 1 second. Your cursor
Yeah,
is showing up.
Yeah, we're not seeing the cursor.
You see that?
There we
now?
go.
That's showing up.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that. All right. So it's a little bit skewed, but you can still see the site there. So again, the northern entrance is the main entrance there. The green area, this is a buffer yard on top of a 4 to 6 foot wide berm, 4 to 6 foot tall berm. Something else that staff wanted to see was basically the same treatment along Wahlberg that the existing Union Cross Business Park has, and so they have done that with the same planting scheme and the same berm, 4 to 6 foot in height, and that's also the same treatment there along Shirley Weevil Road, where you have agricultural zoning across the street. As I mentioned earlier, this property is within the Salem Lake watershed, the Abbott's Creek watershed, where the maximum impervious coverage is 24%. Obviously, they want to exceed that, so in just a moment, I'll go over the findings that are required for special intense development allocation. Also, this is going to generate a significant amount of traffic, obviously, so they have agreed to several improvements, and I'll go through those. We've worked with the petitioner and the City DOT, Jeff Fansler, who is also available if you have any more specific questions on transportation, to kind of tweak some of the conditions, and so I'll just go over those briefly with you here in a moment. But basically, they're going to have to dedicate additional right-of-way along Wahlberg, install curb and gutter, and widen Wahlberg 18 feet from the center. Obviously, dedicate the right-of-way here for about a 450-foot westward extension of Business Park Drive, improve this signalized intersection here, and provide some realignment and widening down at the intersection of Shirley Weevil. These are the building elevations that they have agreed to. And going over the CETA findings, these are the 5 findings that are required, and the first one is conformity with legacy, and as I mentioned earlier, the plan is consistent with the Southeast Forsyth County Area Plan recommendations for industrial and recommended industrial growth as per legacy. The land use design and site design are compatible with the general character of the surrounding area. It's certainly compatible with the industrial zoning to the north and the limited industrial zoning across Wahlberg. And with the berming and lighting condition, signage condition, we feel like it's also generally compatible with the property across Shirley Weevil. Number 3, the project provides significant economic benefit. That's certainly one of the major findings. This will add about $40 million to the tax base, and non-construction jobs are approximately 400. Number 4, it does not pose a threat to the environment, especially water quality, and inappropriate measures will be taken to minimize any potential negative environmental impacts. They have done that with the 2 stormwater ponds that I mentioned earlier. They will be accessing public sewer, so they will not be using a septic system, and they will also comply with the state Department of Environment and Natural Resources in regard to stormwater requirements. And finally, in regard to transportation access, Wahlberg Road is a major thoroughfare. They've got extensive frontage on that. It has ample capacity, and they're very close to the I-74 Union Cross interchange. The rezoning analysis, going from, again, AG to LIS for a 660,000 square foot industrial building. It would generate additional traffic, and it would extend industrial zoning closer to single-family homes. It would also result in the reduction of farmland and a significant amount of acreage from the CETA bank. However, it is consistent with the recommendations of Legacy 2030 and the Southeast Forsyth County Area Plan update in regard to industrial land use. And it also meets the findings, as I mentioned earlier, for CETA, and will allow for a significant creation of jobs and expansion to the tax base. Also, the site is located along a major thoroughfare, and which has extra capacity, and it is close to the interchanges again, as I mentioned. It includes a lighting and signage condition, and it will essentially emulate the same berming and landscaping that is currently provided across Wahlberg Road. And it would extend Business Park Drive eastward, which would set up the balance of the 250 acres for future industrial development. So it's not really a piecemeal approach. We see it as a comprehensive approach for this whole quadrant of I-74. So here's the conditions. I'm not going to read through these, but you can see words that are underlined. These are all in regard to transportation. These are just further kind of clarifying the left turn approaches, the tapers, the right turn storage that were essentially agreed upon, but we just kind of wanted to nail them down a little bit more. Again, I'm not going to read those, but these are as per the revised TIA. We got that after your book went out, and City DOT staff looked that over and worked with the developer on these revised conditions. And again, both are available if y'all have any questions, and I'm certainly available as well. So in closing, staff does recommend approval of the zoning, and we recommend approval of the CETA, and the revised site plan meets ordinance requirements, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Yes.
I have a question regarding the sewer, how it gets sewer access, because you said it doesn't have sewer, but there is a way in which it's getting sewer.
Yes.
Could you explain that a little more?
Yes.
And also, the 250 acres you said that would be opened up by this, what would be the sewer situation for that adjoining bit of land as well?
Okay. Take your first question there. Right now, there's sewer provided, if you can see my cursor there, at the intersection of Wahlberg and Business Park Drive. So the sewer is going to be extended about 200 feet underneath Wahlberg Road, and then the sewer within the site, there's the force main right there. This is the lower part of the site going uphill. It will be forced up to connect in with that gravity extension line. So that's how this site will be served with sewer. That's really only for this site, and that's really only because this is not a wet user. This is a low water type using industry, mostly distribution, mostly warehousing. So in regard to the remainder of the 250 acres, again, as we mentioned in the staff report, there's probably going to be a significant expansion of the sewer system in regard to get gravity to that area. I couldn't speak any more to the details of that, but this is really, they're able to get sewer just for this particular site and this particular use right now. Does that answer your question?
Any other questions, staff, at this time?
The CETA bank, so this will consume about
92
a
acres.
quarter or a third of the remaining bank acreage.
Right, about 520 acres were initially allocated out for Abbott's Creek.
Yeah.
We're now at about 287 acres remaining in the bank, and this will take out 92, so we're going to end up with about 194 acres remaining in Abbott's
So we
Creek.
do 2 more of these projects.
2 more of these, right, would use it up. And this is a large site, 92 acres. I mean, we don't see these very often, but you're right. So it is taking a significant amount out of the bank in this watershed.
Okay, Mr. Causey, you'd like to sign up as a proponent?
Keep it handy. I don't think so. Come on. So, good afternoon, Steve Causey, Allied Design, 4720 Kester Mill Road, Winston-Salem, 27103. We did work with the developer to prepare the site plan. Also here with me today are other team members. We have Austin Watts. He's with Kimley Horn, a national account rep for Medline Industries. And then also is Jay Clapp with Ramey Kemp and Associates. He was our traffic consultant for the project, so they're here available for questions as well. So Gary did a good job. I don't think I can add a lot to what he said. In fact, I'll probably be a little repetitive, but as he pointed out, we're requesting a rezoning from AG to LIS. As he pointed out again, it's consistent with the recommendations in the Southeast Forsyth County Area Plan. We met with planning staff, I think, at least 3 times through a sketch plan process, and they made it clear early on screening of the vehicular parking areas, employee parking, as well as trailer parking areas needed to be screened. We worked, I think, with an acceptable solution, the 6-foot berms and planting yards, again, consistent with what's been done at Union Cross Business Park. Also, traffic was a concern, so we did bring in Ramey Kemp and Associates for the TIA. They prepared the traffic impact assessment. It's been reviewed by both city and NCDOTs, and I believe found to be acceptable with the improvements outlined, I think, in your report. We met with the neighbors on October the 24th. We sent out invitations to about 60 properties, listed properties. We reached out about 1,000 feet beyond the perimeter of the property. We had a pretty good turnout. The meeting was a little contentious and rowdy at times, but I think it was productive at the end of the day. We provided some site plans, kind of sections through the site, an overall aerial view of the area. Heard a lot of concerns about traffic. I won't pretend they loved the project, but a lot of the concerns did seem to be related to speed and traffic along Wahlberg Road. We earnestly listened, heard a lot of comments and questions. The developer sent the design team back. As you know, we requested a month's continuance to work with DOT on the road improvements. Through that process, we did make 3 major modifications to the plan. One was the elimination of a driveway to the employee parking lot, about mid-block, about midway. We've eliminated that. We were able to understand, I guess, better the widening requirements. So the widening on the west side of Wahlberg, for the most part, was eliminated, at least through the residential properties in the middle. We are doing a little widening to accommodate left turn movements and left turn lane extensions. But for the most part, the widening is happening on the east side of Wahlberg Road on the developer's property. Internal circulation was improved in an effort really to get a lot of the vehicles accessing the site from Business Park Drive rather than Shirley Weevil. We feel like we significantly improved circulation internally to encourage folks to enter and exit the site from Business Park Drive. We are located in Abbott's Creek watershed, as Gary mentioned, requesting the CETA allocation. You're also seeing some impacts on what are jurisdictional streams on site. We will be required to permit the stream impacts through the Corps of Engineers and Division of Environmental Quality. We'll probably be pursuing an individual permit. It'll be probably a lengthy process, but final development is contingent on approval of that permit. We're not in a local watershed area regulated by a local stormwater ordinance or program. But either as a condition of the CETA approval or our stream impact permit, we will be providing stormwater management, and in this case, will be regulated by the State Department of Environmental Quality. So that's really all I wanted to add, and I'm certainly available for any questions.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else wants a question?
I had a couple questions for
Yeah.
you. Just on the site design, is there anything about the site that requires the access from Shirley Weevil, or, because you said you were trying to encourage people to use that northern side entrance, is there a particular reason why you would require that, or?
No, it certainly seemed logical and intuitive at the time to provide multiple points of ingress and egress. One of the developers' concerns, at least, is a large volume of trucks in and out. He has to have medical deliveries to hospitals. A problem with a particular intersection, he would like a redundant point of ingress and egress. So that was one of the requirements they expressed to us early on, was the availability to have multiple points of ingress and egress. So that's the outstanding reason. So.
Okay, and the other question was about trucks. Will there be trucks close to Shirley Weeble that'll be sitting there idling for any period of time, or?
It's a fair question. In theory, they come in and deliver. They've got another route to make. You can't say, I won't say they won't sit there. I won't pretend that they won't, but I don't think they're making money sitting there. So, depends on the carrier, I suspect, and logistics is probably beyond me answering that question, but I wouldn't say wouldn't happen. So, just having been around these facilities, I think I've seen it.
Well, along those lines, there is space within the plan for trucks to wait on site?
Certainly.
There's going to be a certain amount of staging that's
Certainly.
allowed,
Yeah.
accommodated on the site?
Certainly a very large lot on the north end of the property, which would make most logical sense for, for that instance. I did have a little discussion with utilities about sewer, and Gary mentioned there's a significant investment, but two options basically would be to go to the north to some facilities under 74, or an extension of gravity sewer to the east down through Union Cross Business Park. It would require some oversized lines, some replacement of lines, but we did have some conversations with utilities staff in that regard. So.
Okay, there might be more questions before
Sure.
we're through, but anyone else like to speak in support of this? If not, then we'll turn to the opposition. Barry Greason?
Hello, I'm Barry Greason. Good afternoon. Address is 4228 Shirley Weevil Road. Zip code is 27107. So I'm here to speak on behalf of a majority of the neighbors on Shirley Weevil Road. We're not necessarily supportive, but we're not necessarily against Medline building in right there at the corner of Shirley Weevil Road and Wahlberg Road. But there are some things that we would like to see adjusted, and I believe you guys have a list of the things we sent in. Summary. So I'm not going to go through these each step, but I do want to expand on some of the things and give some thoughts about what we're thinking. So there are basically two main concerns that we have about building this large facility, and one is lighting and noise reduction, and the other is traffic, which is a major issue. So what I'd like to talk a little bit about is the lighting and noise reduction, and understand that we've got a big berm. There are a lot of trees that are going to kind of shield the facility, but also we want to make sure that the illumination of the site is minimal as possible. We've got quite a few number of households around there, and honestly, we're of course used to living in an agricultural community, so this is going to be a big impact to us locally. So, according to the site plan, we've got a ratio of trees, deciduous trees and evergreens. We really wouldn't mind seeing more of those being evergreens, because in the wintertime, the deciduous trees, leaves are going to be gone and the facility will be visible. So that's an issue that I think could be addressed with the site plan. Another issue is along in the southeast corner, which would be the lower right portion of the plan. It doesn't appear that there's a berm or a buffer in between the facility and what's visible to the houses, the first houses in the neighborhood. And we would like to see something done there. If it's not, and maybe you guys can address that. If there is something there, I don't see it. It looks like would be the lights, the building, everything would be visible to the neighborhood from where that's because there's no trees, there's no buffer or anything right there in that corner. So, but that's something that I'd like to see the site engineers address. The biggest issue, of course, to us is traffic. Wahlberg Road is already a disaster waiting to happen. The traffic analysis, from my understanding, was done in 2015, and the assessments are based on like a 1.5% increase per year. That's blown out of the water. That it's a lot higher than it was 3 years ago. So this facility is obviously going to impact what's happening on Wahlberg Road. And I know it's beyond the zoning to look down as far as Gumtree Road, but that's an issue, that creates an issue down at the Gumtree intersection. So I believe that's something that needs to be considered by the planning board. The speed limit should definitely be reduced. It's 50 miles an hour out there now, and that's something that should definitely be reduced to 35. So, okay, so I was looking at the plan this morning, and it occurred to me, the way the site plan is laid out, we're expanding the road, we're expanding Shirley Weevil Road, where it comes into Wahlberg Road. It's going to be expanded 3 or 4 times wider than it is now to allow the trucks to access. So I'm looking at the plan, it occurs to me that we're not allowing Medline to use Shirley Weevil Road. Basically what's happening is we're going to be driving through Medline's parking lot. There's going to be trucks coming in, the receiving trucks are going to be coming in on Shirley Weevil Road. There's a large employee parking lot that is going to be used, or the employees are going to use Shirley Weevil Road to access that parking lot. So what I would like to propose is that the receiving traffic, and I don't know why this can't happen. I know it's a lot more efficient for the traffic to the receiving traffic to come in on Shirley Weevil Road as far as Medline's concerned, but that receiving traffic could also enter through the light where there's a traffic light already up at what's going to be the new Medline Drive. That traffic could come in, and there's already a road. They've got a road designed all the way around the facility to bring shipping and receiving through the traffic light instead of bringing it into Shirley Weevil Road, where we're going to be running into the trucks. The trucks are going to have a hard time accessing, either turning into or coming out of Shirley Weevil Road on the Wahlberg Road. Whereas if they go up to the light, yes, they may have a little bit more traffic crossing each other, but they can make the necessary adjustments. Medline can make the necessary adjustments to allow the traffic to come in and out up that way and then drive around the backside of the facility. That makes perfectly good sense to me, whether I'm living in Shirley Weevil Road or elsewhere. If I'm a truck driver, I'm thinking that that's probably the best option. Medline, maybe not so, because they just want the trucks to come in as fast as they can, or the straightest line that they can. I don't think it's that big of a stretch for them to come in through that route through the traffic light. It's also much safer for them to do that. So, and I think that needs to be a part of the planning board's consideration as to how the traffic's going to flow for sure. So those are the big issues that we have and that we wanted to bring up and discuss. And the only other thing that I could think of, I'm not real familiar with the different zoning requirements. It looks like the zoning requirement that we have now, which is the type L1, is probably the minimal zoning allowance that you would have for a Medline facility. My concern is that in the future, we anticipate Medline being there. They're going to own the property, but things happen. We just want to make sure that in the future, if Medline moves out, that we're still restricting the type of building, the type of operation to something that's as minimally as invasive as Medline is. Okay. Do you have any questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Greason, how many residents are you basically representing and saying this?
Okay, I would say we have 24 homes on Shirley Weevil Road and an adjoining road, and we have several neighbors here today that could show up, and we have discussed it among the neighborhood. So I would say a majority. I can't say I represent everybody, every thought, but the majority of the households.
Did you folks participate in the public meeting with Medline?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay.
And that was the issue. One of the issues that I brought up was bringing the traffic in up at the light.
Okay. And when they did their presentation, did you see things that they had changed besides the bringing the traffic in at the stoplight? Were there other?
We did notice, of course, that there was an employee entrance in between Shirley Weevil Road and Medline Drive. that was taken out. Okay, now, that's all well and good for people that are traveling on Wahlberg Road and these employees accessing Wahlberg Road. Now, of course, instead of this road that's been omitted, they're going to use Shirley Weevil Road and the traffic lights. So that traffic's going to be divided up. So that actually means more traffic on our road, on Shirley Weevil Road. So, but the biggest issue that I had, even going into when we had the planning meeting or the meeting about a month or two ago, was the traffic coming in and out of Shirley Weevil Road. It's already difficult enough for the residents to come out and especially turn left. Turning right is maybe not such a big issue. Turning left is a huge issue during peak hours. And I can't imagine when employees are leaving this facility, maybe the trucks, the shipping and receiving are not as active during peak time, peak traffic hours, but we've got a lot of employees that are coming in and out, and we've got neighbors coming in and out. So it's definitely a huge issue. And I put as one of the points there to add a traffic light. Everybody wants a traffic light. I understand that. There's looking at the FHA guidelines, there's probably not enough background to provide a traffic light there. And that's why I think the next step would be, okay, if we can't have that traffic light there, let's reroute some of this traffic and put it up there at the traffic light where it's safer and it's not going to hold people up, and it'll be a lot more convenient for, I think, the truck drivers. Definitely be a lot more convenient for people coming down Wahlberg Road and people leaving and entering Shirley Weevil Road, and then also the employees with Medline that are using Shirley Weevil Road. So, okay.
We'll address these. We'll go ahead and we'll finish unless you have something else, we'll let the
That's all I've
other
got.
speakers speak, and then we'll come back and address
Okay.
some of your
Thanks for your
points
time.
here. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we have 4 minutes.
Okay. Charlotte Idle signed up, but she's not sure she's for it or against it. So I was going to let Mr. Browning take your time, but go ahead, Ms. Idle.
Hello, my name is Charlotte Idle. I live at 4143 Wahlberg Road. I am for business. This was why I was a little bit for and against. I am for business, and I really appreciate the jobs coming to to Forsyth County. My concern, and I apologize for being contentious at the meeting, my concern at the neighborhood meeting and now is the traffic and the chaos and the, just like Barry had referenced, you know, it is so dangerous to pull out on Wahlberg Road. You know, everyone, I mean, if I can pass these to you guys.
Can we have them?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. There are numerous wrecks all the time, and they're basically in my front yard or right beside of us. I'm at the intersection of Gumtree Road and Wahlberg Road, and it is a struggle for anyone to be able to pull out. I can't imagine 400 more vehicles, and then also all of the trucks. So while I'm concerned about, you know, the impacts to us, I am concerned about my neighbors on Wahlberg Road and on Shirley Weevil. And I just wanted to make sure that I could express that.
Thank you, ma'am. Richard Browning?
I didn't want to speak.
You don't need to speak? Okay. We have a couple minutes left. Anyone else like to speak? If not, then we'll declare the public hearing closed. Go into work session. Gary, you want to address some of Mr. Greason's concerns?
Yes, sir. Just in regard to evergreen plantings, the ratio shown on the lower left corner of your site plan for every 100 feet is 3 deciduous trees and 12 evergreens, and the petitioner has agreed to bump that up to 14 evergreens per 100 feet. So that does help a little bit, and again, that's consistent with what we've got across Wahlberg Road, and that's going to be on Shirley Weevil as well as Wahlberg there.
Okay.
There is a section currently shown on the plan that I believe was referred to, and there is nothing shown there currently because there is no requirement for a street yard in the area. What we did is the areas that were required for a street yard, we asked them to bump that up to the 4 to 6 foot high berm with the planting similar to what was planted at the Union Cross Business Park. Since the area that was indicated by the speaker doesn't require a street yard, they didn't bump that area up. I'm not sure whether or not they'd be willing to provide that same treatment along that portion. And I see a shake of the head, but we might need to get Mr. Causey back up here to say yes in the microphone so we can get an affirmative on that. But I think the area where Gary's pointing to right now is the area where there is no protection. There is if you follow his cursor on to the east, there's a buffer yard that's actually shown. It's not shown with the planting requirements moving further to the east, but there's a portion where the site abuts that right of way where no buffer yard would be required and no street yard would be required. So if you can come up and say that y'all would be agreeable to that, I think that would address that one concern.
Yeah, frankly, I could have done a better job showing that. Definitely that buffer yard should wrap. Maybe there's two options. We could keep it along Shirley Weevil, or we could put it up maybe adjacent to the curb on site, and I think either would be acceptable. But as we tend to exceed 100 feet away from a right-of-way, we do drop the plantings in the buffer yard, but I think it's certainly reasonable in that area to wrap them around that corner.
So, show us how far, what are you proposing? Can you get the cursor?
Gary, we can,
Yeah, flip over to the camera.
as he was talking, I started sketching the, I don't know if you can see it here, but I just
He's
started
showing
sketching the red area here, more or less along the curb on site, but certainly it could be here along Shirley Weevil as well, where a conventional or typical street yard may be, but either I think would be fine and would make sense to come
And what's the number of plantings now on all that?
So we did agree, and again, this may have been inadvertent. We had understood 12 evergreens per 100, but we have agreed to 14 evergreens per 100 linear feet.
Plus the deciduous.
Plus the deciduous,
Right.
yes, sir. Yeah,
And there's a berm there as well, right?
We are
4 to
proposing-
6 foot tall berm, yes.
exactly.
Okay. All right.
And I think, in fact, the street yards vary in width from 50 to 100, and I think maybe a little bit of 30, but we did push everything back off to accommodate those plantings.
And the lighting condition would wrap all the way around that area as well. It's all along Wahlberg and Shirley Weevil right-of-way.
I mean, our lighting standard now would, what,
Yes, it covers all of the right-of-way there of Shirley Weevil, the half-foot candle at the property line, at the right-of-way line.
on the question about the employee parking,
Yep.
could there be another driveway permit or curb cut between Shirley Weevil and the main entrance up there to access the employee parking lot?
First plan came in with that. It was probably as much of a product of the TIA review as anything, Jay, I can't remember. That was a concern, at least, from NCDOT, was that, I'll call it mid-block intersection. So between that and some of the concerns of the meeting, it kind of made sense to go away. And in its place, what we did was created, won't pretend how much it would be or could be utilized, but we afforded the opportunity for employees to leave in the dedicated kind of lane around this manor, and would get them out to the light.
But you did have an entrance there, and DOT recommended taking it out?
I can't say how strongly, they strongly encouraged us to remove it. I won't say we couldn't go back, but Jeff, I don't know if he has a better recollection.
Well, and also from a staff perspective, under the current configuration of the property across the street, you would be having traffic lights shining into occupied residential dwellings. So, our concern was, again, try to set it up the way we did with the business park across the street, which has no external access onto Wahlberg Road except for the dedicated business park entrances. And we wanted to set this up in a similar manner to ensure you don't have those mid-block issues and you don't have traffic lights shining into occupied homes.
What was the consideration for the traffic signal at Shirley Weevil?
I'll have to defer to traffic engineers, either ours or theirs, but,
I think basically didn't meet the warrants, the volume, the level of service didn't warrant the signal, but I'll let you hear that from others if you need to.
What about number of employees, ballpark, as well as increased traffic?
Currently, we show estimated parking calculations based on about 300 employees. That's expected to kind of go up, but for the purpose of parking calculations at least, we show 300, which calculates to 200 spaces. However, everybody drives and you get a shift change and, to allow for some future growth and expansion. That's why you're seeing the number of spaces. I don't think I've answered your question, but that's kind of the take on the employees.
All right.
So.
Yeah,
Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Board, Jeff Fanzer, representing City DOT here in this building at 100 East First Street, Winston-Salem. Just to tag along some of the comments you've just now heard, the traffic signal related to the Shirley Weevil access is not currently warranted. Of course, you have AM and PM higher volumes with employees leaving, but not enough to warrant installation of a traffic signal. Keep in mind that introducing additional stops on Shirley Weevil with much higher traffic volumes increased delay on Wahlberg. So you're going to stop Wahlberg again. It often yields driver behavior to react accordingly. I want to speak just a little bit to the TIA. Did review it for all the assumptions and found it was satisfactory with the improvements that you see spelled out in the conditions. Extended turn lanes to get traffic out of the through movements is a big one to prohibit some of the rear end collisions and delays experienced on the thoroughfare. The extensive delay, the level of service overall does decrease, but it is still satisfactory. The overall level of service at the northernmost, at the Business Park Drive, goes from a level service B to a C, still within our realm of satisfactory. And then the turn movements at Shirley Weevil with the extended turn lanes that the developer has agreed to provide gets the traffic out of the through lanes, and the level of service for those turning movements is satisfactory, an A or a B. They should operate at a B or better throughout the day. The delay is expected to be experienced a little bit on Shirley Weevil and even across on the westbound movement. On the eastbound movement from the other side at Enterprise, coming from the other side of the street. So we will see some delay, but at this time, traffic signal is not warranted.
Mr. Fansler, the issue was brought up about the speed limit being 50. Do you see any justification for reducing that? Would that be possible?
Always possible. This is an NCDOT maintained road, so they would have to have their support for this. Currently not even in the city limits that we would go out and have something from the city staff be able to do. However, we've historically had issues with just lowering speed limits on roads such as this. Driver behavior tends to indicate that if we lower the speed limit, unless we have police enforcement, doesn't always yield, just because we change the signs doesn't yield driver behavior unless we get the backing from law enforcement and actually issue the tickets to enforce that speed limit, which is not always as easily done, especially with so much going on and how many speed problems we see around town. It's not always the solution just to lower the speed limit.
Okay, and one other question. If they didn't have that access at Shirley Weevil, what do you see the traffic implications for the, if there were just one entrance?
Well, the site this size, and I think that if we ran the traffic model, it would indicate this. A site this size needs multi-access. You have a lot of large vehicles, tractor trailers, and the amount of time to clear the queue of all the employees, tractor trailers, and the folks leaving at one centralized location, and accompanying that with the traffic across the street, and however you phase that signal to work, it would prolong the delay experienced on Wahlberg because you're having to hold such so long to empty the queue out. You'd probably back up past the driveway to even get down onto that new alignment road and cause some issues. So we do like the multi-access, not only for level service reasons, but also for fire and emergency access and multi-accesses in and out, getting folks out of the facility should something happen at that one entrance.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Board members?
If gravity sewer becomes available for this other 250 acres and other properties at some point in the future, then CETA allocation won't even be required.
Yeah, I want to kind of.
That is my major concern.
Yeah.
Is the consumption of the CETA.
What I was communicating with, across the audience with Margaret about, and was there, whenever CETA was allocated by the county, you could do 10% of your area of each basin in CETA,
Right.
but you didn't have to put all of it in your bank at one time. We put 520 acres out of this basin into the bank, which only represented 5% of the land area of that bank. So we have another 5% in reserve. So we really had 1,040 acres that could have gone into the CETA bank. We only put 520, so the county's holding another 520 in reserve. So we're essentially only down a quarter of the total CETA that would be available if the county so choose to put it into the bank.
So, okay, the state allowed the county to bank 10%. The county banked 5%.
And held 5% in reserve
Okay.
for every basin that they have.
Okay.
Yep. So there's, instead of taking 92 of the 290 some that were left, there's really, you're taking 90 some of the 830 that's left.
Right.
Of what's in the bank now, do you know what the biggest contiguous parcel of it is? Off the top, I mean, is this large compared to some of the other ones, or no?
I don't know what the other approvals have been within this watershed. I'm not sure. This would probably be one of the largest job generators in that basin.
My concern with the CETA on this one is that they're only going to cover 38%. They really didn't need but 50 acres to do the 70%. We're taking 92 acres out of the bank. If they could have found a 50-acre tract, they could have built the same building and saved us 40 acres. But so maybe they want to donate 40 acres of this to the county for a park, and then just own 50, and they don't need to take 50 of them.
Sounds like a nice commercial right there.
Yeah, I think we can work something out here.
Yeah, 92 acres of CETA is
Okay.
a lot of money.
Yeah. That's right. Okay. Does anyone care to make a motion, or if we have more questions?
Make a motion for approval.
Motion, Mr. Leek. Was there a second? Mr. Hicks, second. Discussion?
Yeah, I just would encourage the petitioner to keep working with the neighbors on this, because I think you're making some good progress already, and my main concern is the truck access on Shirley Weevil, because I don't see that as particularly appropriate for a residential area and could be dangerous. So if there was a way to limit trucks from coming in there and still allow circulation of the employee parking, maybe that would be a good compromise here.
The company signage for trucks just on the
Yeah,
north end.
yeah, but the trucks on that road, I think, is very problematic.
Mr. Chairman, if we could just get clarification from the motion and second, that includes the provision dealing with that additional area for screening and buffering, and also the revised conditions related to traffic that were presented.
Yes.
Okay.
Any
Yeah, I got
discussion?
one more question about
Yeah.
this bank.
Yeah.
All right, so if the county's got 500 or 600 acres more they can stick in the bank, what actually has to take place? Just the county, someone makes a motion and they vote on it?
Margaret is our resident watershed expert, so we may want to bring her up to answer that question.
I think one of my biggest questions is, does the state have to get involved with that in any way? Or that's just a county decision they can make?
Well, the county would revise their ordinance, and the state would have to approve that revision of the ordinance. So just because that's what they have to do for any revision
Is
of the
that
watershed ordinance.
Is that as likely as a hospital getting a certificate of need approval?
No,
Or
it's
is it
not.
something-
Really, what happened was it was originally 5%, and then the state changed to 10%, and the county just never changed. So it was a timing thing.
So the county can just submit the request to the state rubber stamps an okay, and then the county can vote on it and add 500 acres to the bank.
I'm not sure that it's rubber stamp. So, but I would not anticipate that would be an issue. I mean, we have had I can't even remember where the other CETA was allocated. This has been in place since 1994. So it's been in place for, well, actually even probably before then. So in 25 years, we really haven't allocated that much.
Right. And these are the types of projects that it was set up to be used for.
They're pretty high.
Unquestionably.
I think one of the reasons why we haven't allocated a lot is because the standards are pretty high. And it's looking for projects like this that are significant economic benefits.
Right. Okay.
Any other comments, board members? We have a motion for approval. Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
You can always go look in that Excel spreadsheet, Aaron. That's a little scary. Whole dynamic.
Mr. Grubbs, do you need to give them now? It's a good time to
Probably
leave.
get
That's really good.
Beth. Beth. Beth.
You should see, metal.
Oh, yes,
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is rezoning case W 3390. Petitioner is Alan and Gina Surratt and James and Carlene Ramsey. This is a approximately 0.88 acre site located on the northwest corner of Ricks Drive and Thurston Street. Petitioner is requesting a special use rezoning from PB to LBS to allow for the use of indoor kennel. And just a reminder, this case was continued from your last planning board meeting in November.
What are we on?
The subject property is located in Growth Management Area 2, urban neighborhoods. This is our location map. You can see the subject property is comprised of 4 parcels. This is the Hainstown Mill Village neighborhood. It's located just north of Stratford Road. You can see the bottom portion there. Just west of the Hainstown Shopping Center there. That's the GPL zone portion. And just across from the Hainstown Park. You'll notice that the majority of the surrounding property is zoned PB, or pedestrian business. It's the 2014 aerial. You can see that shopping center being built there, and of course the park. And it's a little bit more updated Google Maps view, just to kind of give you a little more perspective. If you can see the outline in red, that's the current ARF location, and the outline in yellow, that's where they're proposing the rezoning. It's the southwest Winston area plan update. It's recommending land use map. It does recommend a mixture of uses for this area. And here you can see the subject property there to the left of Thurston. Does include one of those vacant lots and 3 of those homes all the way up to the intersection. You can see the shopping center in the background. This actual lot, the foreground, it's not included. The one to the right of that little concrete lip there, that is included. So, that one actually will also propose to remain vacant on the site plan, just for a frame of reference. This is directly at the intersection of Thurston and Ricks, just to your left there at that corner, and I'll show you in a moment. That's where they'll be proposing their outdoor enclosure. This is directly across the street. You can see this, again, was traditionally single-family homes, but was rezoned back in the 70s for the pedestrian business. This is one street over to the north on Upton. It's a mixture of office, personal services, and this street will actually, the rear of these buildings will be to the rear of the proposed ARF building. This is the proposed site plan. You can see the 4,100 square foot building in the center of the properties. The outdoor enclosure there. We're enclosing that with a required 5-foot high, tall, opaque fence, and then a 12-space parking area with an additional vacant lot they don't propose any change on. They are also adding some additional street tree plantings, and they're going to be closing up a few curb cuts and try to improve the sidewalk there as well. They have submitted elevations. I want to make sure that this kept the suburban character of the neighborhood. You can see they've met that. And just as an update, a second neighborhood meeting was held on November 28th to discuss additional concerns. As a result of that, the petitioner has volunteered an additional condition prohibiting the use of the outdoor enclosure for dogs excepting Saturdays from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. So again, the outdoor enclosure would not be allowed for anything but cats, which I don't imagine they'll be using that for cats either, except on Saturdays from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. In our findings, we found the proposed use will provide a needed community services. The proposed infill development will utilize some vacant lots as well as unused lots in a commercially zoned area. The site plan depicts additional street tree plantings and sidewalk improvements which will improve the streetscape. And the request is consistent with the recommendations of Legacy 2030 and the Southwest Winston-Salem Area Plan Update. Therefore, we do recommend approval for the rezoning request, and the site plan does conform to UDO requirements. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions of staff?
Yes, Ms. Quirk. You mentioned that the area in the plan was to have some mixture of development. Does it already have the mixture?
It does.
So we're not introducing mixture in a place that doesn't have mixture.
That's correct.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. When you were talking about Upton, you mentioned there were personal services and others. Are there residential that back up to this?
I believe there are one or two residents. I don't think they back up to this site in particular, but I didn't do a specific inventory. I did a general inventory of the neighborhood, and it is, again, a mixture of some residences who've remained there since this was rezoned to pedestrian business back in the 70s, along with offices, again, some of those personal services. On the corner, there's actually a building contractor general, I believe, as well, so it is quite a mixture of uses throughout that entire neighborhood for the pedestrian business end portion.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. This is a public hearing. First person signed up, Jim Ramsey.
Jim Ramsey, Realtors. My address is 5640 Folkestone Road, Pofftown, 27040. I own 4 of the properties out there. This one I've had about 35 years. I thought I would sell it too when I bought it. Little food. I've been there about 15 years. They've caused no problem. I've heard very, very little out of them since they've been there. And I think they make a good neighbor. Anything? Any questions?
Do they have an outdoor kennel now?
They do out behind their building, up beside the garage, just off Stratford.
Okay.
I've not been to their building in about 8 or 10 years, except for to go by.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, sir. Molly Light.
Molly Light, 313 South Main Street, 27101. As has been pointed out, this whole area is mixed use. It really is the definition of mixed use. And our house has been part of that mixture for, someone said 15 years. I'm sure it's at least that long. But and as you heard from the gentleman before me, there has never been any complaint that I know of that would affect the neighborhood. the cats are inside. They don't meow loud enough to bother anyone. And the dogs are only on site for the adoption fair on Saturday afternoons for several hours. And they're too busy finding a permanent home with the people who come to be barking excessively or anything like that. So I just wanted to say that it's neighborhood friendly, never caused any problem, and as I say, my puppy came from there, so I'm proud of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Ashley Sipe?
Hi, my name is Ashley Sipe. I live at 6700 Shallowford Road, Louisville. I'm the real estate agent that's representing the buyer or donor in this. And to give you a little bit of background, I think going through this, the biggest holdups have been, or biggest questions, I think, because I think mostly it's just concerned neighbors just wanting to know what's going on. And there's been a misunderstanding that dogs are there and outside all the time. But like she just said, the dogs are only there on Saturday for a fair. They're all fostered out. So it may be that someone drops a dog off there, but then they have a foster get them immediately. And I think that's a very rare occasion that even happens. So I know that the dogs barking has been a concern, but with the condition that we've offered, it allows for dogs to only be outside on Saturday, for which the period of time is we've been discussing with some of the neighbors. Basically, other than that, and also I think another concern, there were two other concerns, one being parking, and we've actually added 2 additional spaces, more than that are required. And also, you know, a big thing that came up is like, okay, the future, what happens if ARF goes under and, you know, there's a new indoor kennel? But I, you know, have explained and discussed with them that basically that conveys with the property, the conditions that we set would go with it as well. So that's all I have. Does anyone have questions?
Let me, a question. Is there another person who is going to speak from ARF, or?
Yes.
Okay, I'll wait and then ask that.
Okay.
That was a question you brought up. Okay.
Thank you. Rebecca Kennedy?
Rebecca Kennedy. I live at 1763 Latonia Road. I believe I put the ARF address on my paper, 311 Harvey Street. I'm ARF's director. We have been there in that house on Harvey Street since 2004. Just to repeat what they've said, I can tell you about the operation. I can't tell you about square footage or the plans of the building other than what I see. But in operation, we have cats that live in the building, and no, they don't meow loudly and they don't go outside. The only time anytime we take a cat outside the building, it's in a carrier, and it goes to the car, to the vet, or to the car home. We do have cats in foster homes as well, but we have a small number that live in the house. And as far as dogs, all of our dogs are kept in foster homes, and they come on Saturdays just for the adoption fair. And they're always contained either in arms, on a leash, or in a carrier as well. We don't walk dogs up and down the streets in the neighborhood. They don't roam freely. Even in the enclosed area, if they are outside, they are in a kennel. So just to alleviate the fear, I mean, I know one gentleman called me and said, are you going to have animals running around in the front yard? No, not at all. We protect them, and we're just right now we're right off Stratford Road. So of course, even though that's such a nice area and it's quiet down in that area, it's a very close space to Stratford Road. So we protect our animals very diligently from any harm.
On average, just out of curiosity, on those Saturdays where they present the dogs for adoption, approximately how many dogs are on display?
I would say, I mean, certainly it varies. Sometimes we have litters of puppies, so that could be 6 or 7, but they're small enough that they go in one container. 30 or so, just again, depending on the time of year. When it's not puppy season and we don't have as many, then we have a few more adult dogs, something like that.
Thank you.
To follow up on that question, somebody, I guess, had expressed some concern about traffic or parking. It sounds like you have more people that come for the fair.
Yes.
About how many people come to participate in that? And this is a weekend, I'm assuming.
It's on
it would be
Saturday,
occurring
yes, sir.
on-
Mhm.
And there is on-street parking there, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, yes.
So-
I would say volunteer-wise, maybe 7 or 8. And then as far as the traffic, it just depends. When we have little tiny fluffy dogs that are for adoption, we're going to have a line out the gate when we open. But it just really does depend. I would say on a very busy Saturday, 50 people could cycle through over the period of time. On a slow day, 3 or 4. So it really just depends on the day and what we have available. But it is on Saturday. Now, during the week, people do come to the house, and that's why we have cats living there. At least they can see something that has 4 legs, and that makes them happy. But we accept donations and help people with their issues if they come to us to find placement for animals, things like that. So we have just routine traffic during the week, not great numbers.
Have you discussed with staff or neighbors a condition that would say that there aren't dogs that would be over a certain number of dogs that wouldn't be residing there or something like that to reassure them along those lines? Because you can say all these things to us, but if
Right.
you have an indoor kennel, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't change something
Yes,
in the
sir.
way you operate.
Well, we have discussed it, and they will better be able to answer the question as what we've put in writing, but that's part of the discussion, is to say what we will do. We do not have dogs living on the property, because that's not good for the dogs.
Right.
Because basically, they're by themselves 23 hours a day. And if ever we've had anybody there overnight, somebody has to come in the morning, somebody has to come at night, and they're by themselves. Our animals are house pets. It might be a 100-pound dog, but it sleeps in the bed and sits on the couch. So that's what we promote for our animals, so that they're not left there alone, yeah.
Thank you. Christine? Not sure of the last name. She knows what she is. How much time we have left?
Over 6 minutes, close to 7 minutes.
Okay.
Christine Moriquaz. I live at 28284 Forest Drive, 27104. And I know the big concern has been about the dogs. And really, ARF is a cat organization, but to help the dogs, they've allowed them to come in on Saturdays for a several-hour period and to be put up for adoption. People come in, like Rebecca said, but it's not, if there are 50 people, it's not 50 people at one time, because, there's over a certain amount of hours that these people come and go. Originally, we asked for 10 to 6, I believe, for the hours, and we're willing to cut that down if that helps the neighbors, feel more comfortable. There really hasn't been any complaints about the dogs where they are now, because they aren't allowed to run loose. If they have to, if they have to go out to the bathroom, they go to the yard, they're on a leash. They're in containers. All the fosters take their dogs home at the end of the day if they haven't been adopted. So the dogs are really, kind of a sideline just to help them, because ARF doesn't have the ability to have dogs and cats in their facility. And so we're really basically building a cat shelter. And with that cat shelter, could offer, some veterinarian services for the cats in there. But beyond that, the dogs are just, they've just been on Saturdays for, a few hours. And if they don't want 10 to 6, then we can cut that back a little bit to make them feel better. The zoning issue, as we all know, if ARF had to sell it, somebody would have to go through the same process that we're going through now to rezone, to change the kennel thing. So that really shouldn't be an issue or a concern, because it can't happen. It is zoned for what you approve, and that's it. So we're just really trying really hard to make the neighbors feel really comfortable, because we understand when something new comes near your area, if you have a business or a home, how is this going to impact you? And we're just moving around the block, and it's going to be very nice facility. It's going to be, blend right in, nothing glaring. We'll fence things around so that nothing unsightly shows, the dumpster. We want to be good neighbors, too. So anything that we can do to alleviate these fears, we're more than happy to work with. Any questions?
Do you have any discussions with the neighbors about the type of fencing? I know it's described as opaque, but that could be a wide variety of things that would go with the neighborhood.
I think, John, huh? Okay, I think the contractor has that information, yeah, because we don't want it to be, we want it to be able to shield the sound and, not have it visible and all that, so I think John can help with that. Anything else?
Yeah, did he have some
He's going to,
information about?
Yeah, John
is.
is.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Good evening, John Sipe, 700 Shallowford Road, Louisville, North Carolina, 27023. The fencing at this point, the neighbor behind us, I think his name was Kevin, he asked the same question, and I kind of explained to him that it's something that we can work together as a neighborhood on. If they don't want a white opaque vinyl fence because maybe that stands out against something that they don't have, or the neighbor behind them, he doesn't like it, then that's something that's pretty much open for discussion. Again, like Mrs. Morequas said, the project is, the overall goal is for it to blend in. The overall goal is for it to be basically a residential property, to where the landscaping kind of flows with what's behind it. The landscaping is continuous with what's in the neighborhood. So I don't want to say that we have anything set in stone, but we would like to work with the community to make sure that everybody's in agreement on, kind of what's going to be. But yeah, it would be something opaque, of a decorative design. And there's a lot of different kinds to that.
Yeah, it's not shown on your elevations, but that's one of with the amount of area that's going to be fenced in, it'll be a substantial part
Right.
of the appearance.
And again, that's kind of why I defer back to the community or the neighborhood involvement, to where, we could specify just a white vinyl fence, and to us, that's perfectly fine as a general contractor, but it might not be what the neighbors necessarily want to see, so we're open to working with an attractive fence that everybody is happy with. I guess is the best way I can describe that.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Let me follow up on that if I could with Brian. Is it specified that it is a solid fence?
Yes, that's actually a requirement of the use for
Okay,
kennel and
so it's a solid fence, it isn't just a chain link fence with those little strips in it or something like that?
It's a opaque fence at least 5 feet in height is what the ordinance requires.
So it's a requirement of them having that enclosure.
So the opaqueness is a requirement. Now, what material is used
Okay,
is up for
you see,
discussion.
opaqueness doesn't mean solid to me. It means I can't see through it.
Right. It actually does in the ordinance, but
In the ordinance, it means it's solid? Because I know we have these car garages, and they have chain link fences, and all of a sudden we come in and say we need to have opaque fences, and they put up screens or something like that, and
the ones that have those are a remnant of a compromise that was made with council, because prior to a certain date, it was actually Board of Aldermen at the time, prior to a certain date, there was no fencing required for motor vehicle storage yards. Motor vehicle storage yards were amortized over a period of time. This is back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And they were allowed, the existing ones were allowed to do chain link fence with the slats, but moving forward, new ones could not do that.
they're solid.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
It's so in the ordinance, it says fence or wall opaque is a vertical structure constructed of masonry, concrete, metal, or wood material which does not allow light to pass through.
Okay. Perfect. It could be brick.
Brenda, are you satisfied?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else like to speak in support of this? Okay, if not, then we'll turn to the opposition. Kavita Singh. No,
In
you must,
support.
support.
Yes, sir. If you got time.
I'd already reset the clock, but there was 247 on there, so
Okay.
we'll play it by ear.
My name's Alan Surratt. I have 7 properties in that neighborhood, 3 of which are considered for the rezoning request. I can say that there are some issues with parking, on-street parking on that road. I think ARF has addressed that with off-street parking. They're basically condensing 4 potential pedestrian business properties into 1. So I think overall that's going to be beneficial to the community. I still own the property across the street, directly across. I plan to keep that and either refurbish it or take it down and put something nicer on it. I think it's going to improve the property values in the neighborhood, and that's why I support it.
Thank you. All right, now, Kavita Singh.
Hello, my name is Kavita Singh, 305 Thurston Street, Winston-Salem, 27103. I own a salon and spa right across where the ARF is going to be. Being in a business, I welcome other businesses, but in that area, there's Hainstown always been a quiet and beautiful area. We have about 17 or 18 salon and spa in the whole neighborhood, and quite a few residents. Our biggest concern is being barking, the dogs being outside, because we don't want to hear any noise, and people are getting a service and ladies are coming to the spa, getting relaxation. So they have mentioned they're going to be doing Saturday, but we run business on Saturdays as well. And then our other concern is being parking, if it's going to bring a lot of traffic, that's going to impact our business. And I do like to show my business picture because we have upscale salon and spa, and definitely the look of their business is going to matter because I'm just right across from them. So those are my concerns, I have. And then I have a 7 to 8 girls who rent from me, they are booth rental. And if they are not happy, they're going to leave. I'm going to lose my income and my business. So I just need to make sure I give them a safety and security. This is not going to impact our business, and it's not going to impact my business. If you have any question, I'm here to answer.
Yes. Well, what do you think of what you've heard so far today?
I was not aware of it, there is going to be 30 or 40 dogs, on Saturdays, and then I don't know how often they do fair, that I was not, and then when last time we spoke with each other, and I thought they mentioned the Saturday timing was going to be 12 to 6, but I saw today is 10 to 6, I'm not opposing, but I'm not on the same time supporting either. I'm just concerned. I like to support them, but I just want to protect our business first.
Yeah.
And if you like, I really like to show our business. I know they showed all the Hainstown where they don't have it. Is there any way I can show my business?
Click on.
You mean point out?
Yeah, well, no, she's going to show a picture. I'm looking at Google Street View right now, but.
Yeah. Can I show this picture?
And then, then zoom. I don't think it zooms. Yeah, there you go. I don't think the camera zooms anymore.
Yeah. So this is
Show us on the map where that is in relation.
Yeah, it is right across from the parking lot. It's the vacant tract. It's that one right there. No.
It's right across from.
It's the vacant tract that doesn't have a building on. That building was just built. You got to remember these ortho photos and the planometrics are from 2005. The planometrics are, so that's a new building that was built there.
And the building that ARFs are going to build is on which one of the lots across the street?
See, and this
Directly
is.
across.
So that'll be directly across from the parking area.
She's across from the parking area, not the building.
Correct.
Right.
Ms. Singh, just a question for you. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity. I am understanding your position that you're concerned about your business. You're not for or against them. You're just concerned about the impact of you being a business owner and the other business owners in the neighborhood.
Yes.
Have you ever had the opportunity to see ARF present in the row of businesses there, all connected in the Thruway Shopping Center on a Saturday?
No.
Okay. Generally, the animals are presented. My own experience in viewing that is that there was minimal barking because the dogs are really diverted and a lot of attention being given to them, and most of the dogs just want to be petted, and so if they're being petted in those situations, my experience is what they were, as someone was stating over there, pretty quiet. So just to allay your fears, not even trying to sway or dissuade you in terms of your position, my experience was that they weren't doing that much barking.
Okay.
You can't control it,
Yeah.
but at the same time, my experience was that dogs weren't doing a lot of barking because they were getting a whole lot of attention.
And I guess I've seen the same thing that Mr. Hicks is talking about. Do you think there's any potential that exposure to these people who are coming into the neighborhood to foster dogs would see your business and consider using your business?
Yes, we thought about that could, increase our business too. But like I have spoken with my girls who works with me, and then they were like concerned because first we thought it's going to be outdoor, then they're saying it's going to be indoor when we went and met them, and dogs only going to be out there on Saturday. That's our other concern was just in case if they happen to be out of business within like a year or 2 years, someone else comes and take over and then makes it outdoor. Because those girls, they rent from me. They can move anytime, but I am going to be there forever.
Right.
So I just want to have that protection for my business.
Understood.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
My name's Kevin Ebbink. I own 301 Upton Street, which is going to be directly behind the proposed site. I've been there
Is
for
that your address? You live at 301
I
Upton?
do not live there. That
I
is
do.
my business. I do have a apartment in there, so it is part residential and part business.
We're just looking for your mailing address. Is that the best mailing address for you?
301 Upton Street.
Okay, thank you.
So, I've got a different viewpoint on the whole thing. I have nothing against ARF. I have no problem with their intent, and I'm not really going to be here talking about the concerns about the dogs and all that stuff, because that's a little myopic. I noticed that the word planning board is here, okay? I live in West End, and, we've had to protect that neighborhood through a historic district. And I've been working in this particular area for 18 years. And I've taken it for granted, to be honest with you. I assumed that there were some protections for the character of the neighborhood. And what's about to happen with this particular project is there's going to be an elimination of 3 properties. Now, if I look at just that street, there's some improvements that could be had with the properties that are there. The problem is we're removing 3 properties that have been there for over 50 years. And on top of that, the thing that bothers me the most is that I didn't realize what can replace these properties. So if you go back and if you look at what's going to be a structure that's going to go up on Ricks Drive between Thurston and Harvey, there is a proposed site there for a 2-story office building that is not in character with this neighborhood at all. And somehow it's being approved with no questions. And so I'm actually looking at this project in one light, that at least we've got a 1-story structure going in there, and that they're going to improve that street. So I'm looking at it somewhat in a positive light, because what I don't want to go in there is to have what Baptist Hospital has done in their surrounding neighborhood going into Ardmore, where they've been plinking off houses. The post office is gone. We don't even have a post office in the area anymore. And I know I'm mixing this up, but, you've got this thing called Legacy 2030. I don't see where this particular neighborhood is being protected, and it should be protected for a couple reasons. So when I was starting my business, I've got an investment advisory business. I had sold my practice to a partner of mine, and I was trying to start over again, and I was looking for an affordable place to start a business. And I was about to take a spot in the Winston-Salem building because I could not find a place for a small business to get started. And then somehow, some way, I knew that wasn't going to work for me, and I had a realtor take me around, and we found this property. I've been there for 18 years. And that property, between the rental that I get from the residents, people here, the gentleman was up here saying that he did some research. I have to say he didn't ask too many questions, because all 4 properties behind this site are residential in nature, meaning that the corner lot from Thurston on Ricks Drive in Upton, that is a residential. Up to about a year ago, there was a gentleman that lived there for 50 years. He died, has left it to his nephew. My property has a renter in the back that is going to be affected by the potential noise, but I think we're going to be okay with that if we really talk about it. The people next to me, the Porters, he's lived in that house for over 50 years. He's right behind it. I understand that he's in support of the project. The house next to that is also a residential house. And so there are about 200 residences in this area. So I just want to remind you guys a couple things. Number one, this is a historical in nature neighborhood that needs to be protected. And I'm realizing it's not. It is completely unprotected right now. And the proof of it is that ridiculous building going up right across the street from PDQ on the corner of Thurston and Harvey and Ricks Drive. If that's what if what we have is a situation in that neighborhood where an entity can come in and essentially plink off 4 or 5 buildings and throw them away, what's about to happen with that property, there was a viable business that is being taken out for that building. So that's going to be 4 structures in 1 block in the next year and a half. And so I'm just bringing up a bigger picture. This really has nothing to do with what they're doing. I'm sure they're going to be good neighbors. I'm sure we can give some consent as far as some recommendations. I would like to see that the landscaping, one of the problems is landscaping. And so I think a fencing right there in the middle of that lot without appropriate landscaping, robust landscaping around it would be completely inappropriate. Just rockscape is not going to work. So that maintenance, keeping up with the property, and then I would like to see some elevation changes, because that thing that was put up there, that is not in it doesn't look like the area in the neighborhood. I appreciate actually the salon, because I don't know what was there before, but they put up a structure, A, that is quality, and second, looks like the neighborhood. So I really applaud them for having done that. And so I just want to show you my property real quick, and I'll get off the phone here with you. Right here.
That's the one we just.
So this is a property that I have. I use the front of the house for business, but this is the kind of architecture I'd be looking for. Because if I go flipping through these are just houses on the street. You know, they all have a particular elevation, and you'll notice that that's why they're just mill houses that were stamped out. So I'm gonna leave it at this. If the purpose of this planning board is to protect certain areas, I think whatever you guys got to do to get a special commission together, something together to relook at this neighborhood so that we don't have 2-story structures being put in there, which is happening right now. I'm in support of them reluctantly, because I'd rather have the devil that I know than the devil that I don't know go in there. But if too much of these properties start getting taken up, we're going to lose something, I think. Think about what we're doing downtown. We're trying to get business and residential mix. okay? We've got over 200 residences back there, and they're all in weak hands, meaning that someone can take out my neighbor any day with a decent offer. They're all in very weak hands, and this neighborhood's worth protecting. So that's all I have to say. Any questions for me?
Mr. Evans, I would make a comment. In the planning process, there is now a way that neighborhoods can request an overlay.
Okay.
And I don't know if it can be, it may be to design. Does somebody want to speak to that?
You talking about the neighborhood NCO?
Yeah.
Yeah, so an NCO is our Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District, and that allows a neighborhood to organize and to put additional restrictions and standards in place above and beyond what are required from the underlying zoning district. We've got several of those in Forsyth County. We've got Mallard Lakes, Country Club Estates, Stratford Crest. That was our most recent one on
Hannaford.
Stratford Manor, yep. You know, here, the underlying zoning is PB, and PB allows a wide range of uses, so it doesn't quite line up like a traditional residential district does, because you've got uses in there, and so I'm not sure how that would look and work. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it would be certainly different than anything we've done previously.
Well, and the reason I'm responding to that is in the letter that was signed by a number of residents that came in, I was very impressed by the fact that there was a feeling of history with Hanestown Mill area, that we from the planning board look for areas, we're trying to encourage mixed development, and we can't find good examples of it in Forsyth County. And I think it was pointed out there that that is one of the best examples of mixed development, and it wasn't because of anything we did. I mean, and the one, I guess, on Haynes Boulevard wasn't either. But, so that is good, and it is good to support that. So I'm not hearing any particular concerns about this project. Do you feel like there needs to be something clearly written about the noise of dogs or anything?
I think it would be more appropriate, because there's residences there, that you move it from 10 to 12. You know, on a Saturday morning, I don't think my renter's going to want to have the potential of noise. I know I have a little dog, and you could hear her up the street, okay? So I don't suspect that there's going to be a problem, but I think 12 to 6, if that's something that would still work to get the goals accomplished, I think that would be nice. And then the landscaping and the upkeep. You know, I don't know how to put that in there, and then the elevation's got to get it worked on. Outside of that, no, not really. You know, I like the people and I like the project.
And I really encourage you, if you do see that there's the potential of organizing that area, you know, get up with the planning staff and they can sort of work you through.
Can I call you for that?
Yeah.
Okay, because I got to say, that's what's come out of this project altogether, is just the vulnerability of the neighborhood.
Well, you see, I remember back to the early 90s.
I didn't realize how vulnerable it was.
Somebody was trying to buy the whole thing in the early 90s, I think it was, or maybe late 80s.
Just one thing to keep in mind, and again, the NCO would probably be the tool to use. I know one of the reasons why the staff report doesn't speak to any historic analysis is it has been reviewed, and it wouldn't qualify as a National Register District. There's not enough integrity there remaining for it to qualify as a National Register District, which then would preclude it from becoming a local historic district. So an NCO would probably be the only tool that would be available.
Can I make just one suggestion along those lines? Because I have to say, I agree with your comments, and those were some of my concerns as well. I think this is a very good example of a mixed-use neighborhood that really deserves protection. And when I was looking at this case, I looked at the area plan. What does the area plan say? And unfortunately, the area plan says developers should assemble a substantial number of contiguous lots before seeking rezoning. So that goes against what we're trying to do in terms of protecting the integrity of the area. And it also, there's a little preamble. This is a separate special consideration area in the plan, and it does mention the fact that it can't be considered as a historic district. And then it says, well, it's kind of piecemeal and nothing, you know. It doesn't single this area out in a way that I think it deserves and the importance that it deserves. And I really think that we need to pay attention to that in our plans so that when we do rezonings, that we'll pay attention to that. And also, you know, the other concern I had was rezoning to LB from PB. What would that do in terms of possibly encouraging other types of commercial development that maybe isn't in character with the area? I don't see this. I see this proposal is very much in character. It's a neighborhood-serving use, but just the precedent of the LB bothers me a little bit. So I would just like to say that we should, as a board and also in our planning documents, pay more attention to this area and try to do what we can to support its integrity as a mixed-use area.
I'll add on to a couple of those things. The comment in the staff report about the area plan recommendation, which says developers should assemble a substantial number of contiguous lots before seeking rezoning, I think that was when you look at the Hanestown area as a whole, there's still a portion of that neighborhood that's zoned RS7, and I think that perhaps was thinking about that area so we wouldn't get onesies and twosies and speckle that whole area with other commercial zoning. So I think that's really where that focus was, because given the fact that you've got a lot of Hanestown that is zoned PB, PB is a pretty effective district for that area. And that kind of leads into the second point. I think as folks develop or redevelop those houses in that area, PB is really the district that gives you flexibility on setbacks and gives you parking reductions that's going to be more conducive to redevelopment. I wouldn't say this is an outlier, but I wouldn't anticipate us seeing an additional rezonings to LB, because LB does not give you that flexibility that PB does. So to me, I think PB, it's kind of shown, you know, that it's been zoned PB, you know, since '95, and we've, you know, this is really the only rezoning I've seen where we've gone from PB to something else commercial. So that tells me that PB's generally working and allowing folks to use the property and make some functional use out of it. So I don't think we will see a large amount of folks wanting to rezone from the PB that's there.
I'm assuming we used all the time.
There was about 2 minutes left.
Anybody else wants to speak?
One little question. Rezoning property from.
Come back to the microphone, please, sir.
Rezoning the property from PB to LB, why was that required in this case?
Because the use kennel indoor is not allowed in PB.
It's not.
That specific land use is not.
Now, the whole neighborhood was B3. And because of the setbacks and everything, a lot of them wanted to change it to PB, so we did. As far as the keeping up the houses, I've had to tear down one because it wasn't worth keeping up. House next door to it, same difference. I went to look at one to buy last week, and it wasn't worth touching. It was rotted out and shot. And as far as putting restraints in modify, it's a waste of time and money. Of course, I used to say, if my wife chased me out of the house, I would move out there.
I'm surprised you haven't already. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. All right. Yes. In opposition to the, okay, we got a couple minutes.
Minute and a half.
Minute and a half.
Randy Drone, 4601 Kinnaman Road, Winston-Salem, 27103. I own and operate a business directly across the road, Bretco Electric Company. I started out in opposition to this, and after, being educated, I suppose, I think it's a pretty good deal. But I'm with the concerns of Kevin and a lot of these other people that, yes, the structures need to be, things to go with the neighborhood. The roof lines, the pitch on the roof lines, things like that. And also the trees and whatnot around this fenced area. And the fenced area was our biggest deal with dogs. I think that, that's probably not really an issue now. But my main issue is if indeed this were passed and zoned for an indoor kennel, if these people didn't stay there, someone else could come in there and this could be a dog run without any change at all. There's no change that would have to happen. Am I wrong?
It would have to come back to be rezoned with this condition of approval, or limited it to whatever. I mean, if it were approved by the elected body with the hours of operation currently in place for the dogs only being able to be in the outdoor area from the hours currently proposed 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays, if they wanted to have a kennel and have dogs in the run outside of those times, they would have to come back through the rezoning process to change that condition of approval back to the elected body.
So these conditions would stay in place?
Correct.
Once it were changed?
The conditions in the site plan run with the property, not the applicant, not the occupant. So it would stay with the property.
Okay. I think, I'm fine with it if those conditions that we've talked about would,
You done changed your mind now. You're opposed to it, now you're in favor of it.
well, no, I'm not really opposed to it, but I'm not in favor of it either.
Yeah, okay.
I like the issue of a good neighbor coming in there. I think there'll be one listening, talking to them and speaking with them. But, yeah, I've got my concerns.
I understand.
Yep.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Out of time.
All right, I'll now declare the public hearing closed. Move into work session. The question about the hours of 10 to 6 or 12 to 6, I don't know if there's any advantage taking these 30 or 40 people and compressing them to 6 hours instead of 8 hours. I'm not sure I see any advantage to that, but I mean, it currently says 10 to 6. There was some suggestion of 12 to 6, which I think the petitioner would probably agree with, but. Any comments?
What about the landscaping? Is there a feeling that you would do something around the fencing that would?
Well, let's get some motion and we can put some
Okay.
conditions on
We
it.
need a
Don't do
motion
that?
first for it.
Yeah.
I was just wondering about.
I move, we recommend approval.
Second.
Okay, motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Leek for approval. Now, any of the conditions that any of you care to modify?
Was there any concession on that in terms of the property, in terms of landscaping around the fencing?
Come back up.
You see the landscape?
So I would like to address two things, if that's okay. One, the aesthetics of the building. As I spoke with Kevin about, it's going to be, we're planning on hardy siding, try to keep the neighborhood look. I don't want to call it a farmhouse, but, a nice 30-year shingle roof, possibly with like a metal roof, kind of front porch over it, kind of partially surrounding it. The foundation that's exposed underground would be a stone veneer. So it would definitely keep with the neighborhood, if not help a little bit as well. Very open, very free, nice wood columns, stone. So, and then as far as landscaping goes, Neil Arrington here is a landscape architect that we've been working with. So anything that would work well, that it's low maintenance, he's probably the one that you'd want to talk to. Excuse me. Neil?
Neil Arrington, 316 Riverwood Drive, Louisville, 27023. I'm the landscape architect responsible for the site planning for this project. We're currently meeting all of the requirements for street yards and buffer yards, but yeah, we would do some additional foundation plantings. I worked on the Things project back when it was in the hands of Full Circle Builders, when they owned the property. So I've worked on that project too, helped with the landscaping and some of the site planning on it. So, yeah, we can do some nice compatible landscaping on that. Whatever the conditions are, the fencing, you know, they've got a nice composite type fencing now that Trex, there's a Trex product now that looks like lumber, but it's a very low maintenance product. So we could do something like that that's not as glaring as, say, a white vinyl fence. So there's a lot of opportunities, and it's just a matter of what additional conditions you may want to put on the project that we'll be happy to comply with.
Anyone would be more specific?
Well, you know, you all would have to, made the motion, would have to see this, but I think that the concern was that around that sort of stark fence that was going around there, there'd be some kind of plantings to break the monotony of that, and even a little bit.
Ordinance requires
Is
that, right?
something?
Yeah, there's already street trees
Okay.
that are indicated on the street yard around that fencing.
So for that 82-foot run along Thurston Street, there's at least 3 street trees that are shown in that section right there.
I think that's good.
And I spoke to Kevin as well, like, again, his is the property located behind us, and, you know, currently, we're not really necessarily showing anything but a lawn area, but we're completely open to, you know, have compatibility with whatever's behind his house to where it looks pretty much like a residential property as best we can. So, I mean, just because we're not showing it on the plan, we tried to meet the minimum of what you guys were asking us for. That's not by any means saying that, you know, we're not, I mean, I don't want to say we'll load it up with plants, but we can give it a nice look. Absolutely.
I'm fine with that.
Any other discussion, questions from board members?
No.
We have a motion for approval. Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Operation instead of 10 to 6, right?
Oh, Bob.
This y'all be quick. Yeah. Let's think of 10, 15 minutes.
Well, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, we can continue. I missed my Christmas party, so I'm good now.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm here to present UDO 288, which is a petition from the City Attorney's Office to amend the Unified Development Ordinances to modify the use of electronic sweepstakes operations within the City of Winston-Salem. This is not advancing. Okay, thanks. Some quick background. In 2013, City Council approved UDO 243, which allowed electronic sweepstakes operations as a permitted use in highway business zoning districts. Electronic sweepstakes operations that pay out awards in cash are now in violation of North Carolina state criminal law. As such, the Inspections Division has not been issuing permits to businesses who engage in this practice in the city. However, current UDO language does not make this clear. This slide shows the change in the definition for electronic sweepstakes operations, and I won't read through the whole thing. I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that it now references the North Carolina general statutes specifically that apply to this for anybody moving forward. And this is the permitted use table that shows the removal of the use from that HB zoning district. Again, UDO 288 before you today would clarify that permits will not be issued to sweepstakes, electronic sweepstakes operations which award cash prizes. Staff believes the proposed amendment will help clarify the current rules for such operations. And as such, staff recommends approval. And Jerry Contos from the City Attorney's Office is here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Mr. Contos, would you like to speak in support of this or against it?
I am here to address any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you.
I had a couple questions. First of all, what's going to happen with the ones that already exist now? And the second question is, would something like bingo, which doesn't involve electronic machines, how would that fall in, or is that regulated in any way?
I'll answer your latter question first. With respect to bingo, this ordinance bingo does not fall within the purview of this. However, they do need to follow whatever statutes are in place to keep it in check with any criminal ordinances. With respect to businesses that exist now, the vast majority of those businesses, as you may recall, several years ago, some of the operations did come in and get permits once it was clarified that they were no longer to be classified under Services A. Now, many of those businesses closed when the law was changed. So now you have a new iteration of businesses that have popped up and crept up through the entire city. Well, none of those businesses receive permits from the city, so they are all illegal. The city's police department has now begun working in conjunction with the DA's office. There are currently 2 active cases and 3 more which are following behind it. All that is to say that there is now a more concerted and deliberate attempt from a criminal standpoint to address and shut down these operations.
Jerry, could you also clarify the reason why this change in the definition is important for our ability to enforce it on a zoning standpoint, and how it was difficult for us to enforce the existing definition from a zoning enforcement standpoint? Okay.
It's sort of twofold, and you can lead me on the second path, Chris, which direction you want to go. One piece is when folks would come in and say, I'm opening up a sweepstakes, may I have a permit? They essentially were referred to me to explain to them that this particular criminal statute applied to them, and therefore, being that it's a criminal violation, we can't issue a zoning permit. By placing the specific statute in with the ordinance, again, practically speaking, they'll still be diverted to me for an explanation, but at least now it'll be codified within our ordinance as well, rather than someone from the public thinking we're just pulling something out of thin air. Chris, if you want to.
Yeah, and from our standpoint, part of the problem with the way the current definition is worded, where it talks about a business enterprise where persons utilize mechanically, electrically, or electronically operated machine or device that is owned, leased, or otherwise possessed by a sweepstakes sponsor or promoter to reveal the content of a sweepstakes entry. What we have found more recently is through the new iteration of games where they have these fish tables and games of skill. We can't determine whether something is, a reveal to a sweepstakes entry and what is a game of skill, and the ordinance doesn't differentiate between the two. So folks would argue, well, we're not electronic sweepstakes, we're an arcade. Well, what this does is it takes that out of the equation and basically says if you're any type of electronic game that pays out, you are this. And at that point, it would be easier for us to enforce, because we have tried some enforcement measures with some of these sweepstakes operations, and we actually have some appeals that have the cans have been kicked down the road multiple times, because it's hard for our staff to be able to talk about what's a pre-reveal versus a game of skill as far as how these things operate, and we're afraid that we would lose if we tried to articulate that, because we don't have the skill and the expertise necessary to look at the programming behind it to determine whether what they're doing is a game of skill or a pre-reveal kind of thing. So this is going to help us in our enforcement efforts because we don't have to make that call. Essentially, if you're paying out money and you're an electronic device, you're going to fall under this, and at that point, it's much more clear for us from an enforcement standpoint.
And the general statute referenced now in the revised ordinance makes it clear that whether or not you're a game of chance or a game of skill, if you're paying out in cash, you're in violation of criminal statutes.
So this would include a business whose primary concern is not that, but say a bowling center that has a game in there, they would fall under this same.
They would be under those same restrictions.
Okay.
Correct.
Mr. Condit, is this going to drive people to hand out S&H stamps instead of cash?
I don't, my personal opinion, no, I don't believe so. The reason people go there is.
So you didn't feel the necessity to say or cash equivalents or something like that?
I believe.
Or maybe it says.
It talks about things that can be converted to cash.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good then.
Exchange for merchandise of a value of more than $10.
Okay. More than $10, okay. That's pretty good.
Right, and that's how
Yeah.
your arcades are able to operate.
Right.
Because their prizes, their single jackpot shall you, that those tickets that you would get from that, you would not be able to exchange that for a prize of greater than $10 in value.
With one play.
Right. I don't know. My son, they played a lot of them games.
Yeah.
Sounds like your son and Jerry's son should get together.
Yeah. This is recorded. He may need a 1099. Be careful.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else like to speak? Seeing none, declare the public hearing closed. Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Bryan. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Long time coming.
Staff report, Mr. King.
I will try to be brief. January caseload, as you mentioned earlier, is small. We've got our one continued case and one new subdivision. And as such, we will not be having sign check on December 21st because we don't have anything to go look at. So, Beltway interchange plan, we're working on that. That's the interchange at 158 in the Northern Beltway. We had that meeting scheduled for December 11th, and that got canceled due to inclement weather, so we have pushed that back and rescheduled to January 22nd. Downtown Streetscape Master Plan is moving along well. We had December 4th was our day. We had a drop-in session there. We had about 20 to 25 people come to that. That evening, we had a public meeting where the attendance was not quite as robust. We only had a handful of folks come to that, and it left us scratching our heads. And I think the upshot of that is we had such a good turnout on our online survey. We've had over 1,000 responses to that and over 4,000 individual data points. So I think we maybe made it too easy and too good for the public to enter their comments in there. So our consultants are very pleased with the data they've got from that. That's a lot for them to work with. So overall, that's going along very well. Our ICC award, I mentioned to you at one of the work sessions before, that's for our innovations in code. There's a local presentation here on December the 20th. That's what our elected officials and home builders. Chris, I don't know if you have the time on that one.
I think it's 11. Let's see. It is
11 to 12.
It is. I'm getting there. 11 to 12, and I believe it's in City Council chamber.
Yeah, as I mentioned, that's a big deal. That's a national award where we bid out a lot in Los Angeles and a lot of other big places on that. So that's really big for our inspection staff. So just want to mention that again. And last, our
That date again?
Yep, December 20th.
Next Thursday.
Yep, we can do that.
Thank
you. Yep. And last, our Historic Resource Commission awarded the markers for that'll be placed in 2019. There were 4 of those. Jones House, which was the county marker, that's out at Concord Church Road and Williams Road. That's west of Louisville. The one for Liberia, honoring the connection between Liberia and Salem. That'll be over in Happy Hill. You've probably seen 2 articles in the Journal about the 5 Royales. That'll be on Rich Drive. And then the Huntley Furniture Company, that is one that was privately funded by Will Spencer, and that'll be the old Thomasville Furniture Complex there on Patterson and Northwest. So those are the 4 that'll be coming up in 2019. And last but not least, on behalf of staff, I'd just like to say happy holidays to the board, and thanks again for all that you guys do for the community. And that's all.
On behalf of the board, we want to wish the same to the staff, too. So, thank you for what you do. All right, Ms. Smith?
All right, we have a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
All in favor, get out of here.